scientific sources for their reasoning for the mandates that they put in place.
We just lost the internet, so we're going to have to stand down for a sec if you want to announce that.
Okay. Apparently we just lost our internet connection, so we're going to have to stand down for a few minutes.
You can stay there with this. Just we want you to record it.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. I'm the author of 3 books, Maps of Meaning, 12 Rules for Life, and Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. I've been asked by the Honorable Preston Manning to say a few words about our nation's response to COVID. So let's lay out what happened. We faced an unknown threat of indeterminate magnitude. So a new disease made itself manifest on the horizon, and we had no way of calibrating the severity of the illness. We panicked. We then used the panic to justify the imposition of a tyranny that was modeled for us by an authoritarian state led by the Chinese Communist Party. So in our foolish panic, we abdicated our political responsibility and we copied the first mover, which was essentially Communist China. How did we abdicate our political responsibility? Well, we turned over the necessity to consider a multiplicity of options to hypothetical experts on the public health front. And I would say that was an abdication of responsibility because, first of all, we turned those public health experts into political figures having to adjudicate between a number of competing ethical claims, and we also, our political leaders and ourselves as citizens, allowed our responsibility to be usurped by these experts in a time of hypothetical crisis. We then manipulated public opinion in the most egregious possible manner, using a collusion between corporation, primarily the pharmaceutical industry, government and media, who all colluded together to use fear to impose tyranny. And we did that not only by manipulating public opinion through the media, but by using opinion polls to sample that frightened public opinion to justify the imposition of restrictions on our basic rights as a consequence of response to that public opinion, and then to lie in the aftermath of that and claim that that was all based on science. All of that was a lie, as I know full well from talking to people who were advising political figures, including conservative political figures, during the epidemic itself. We suspended our basic rights, including the rights to travel, the freedom of association, the right to bodily integrity, and there's barely a more fundamental right than that, and the right to freedom of speech. We did the latter particularly by persecuting people who dared to say anything against the panicked response to the hypothetical COVID epidemic. Here's a rule of thumb for everyone to consider in the future. Imagine there's a crisis. I suppose now we believe the next one is going to be on the climate front. Imagine that your response to that crisis is a kind of paralytic fear. Then imagine that you use that fear to justify the imposition of any tyranny you feel merited, and you do so while accruing power to yourself. Well, you've just demonstrated that you are not the right leader for that crisis. That's for sure. So what else did we do? We did untold economic damage, which has not yet unfolded, to the supply chain around the world. We're going to starve tens of millions of people as a consequence of that, and put a lot more people into absolute poverty as a consequence of increased energy and food prices. We have no idea what we did on the inflationary front yet. We've seen banks begin to fail in the United States, and we have no idea where that's going to end. So that was all a part and parcel of the panicked response. We've damaged the population's faith in both public health and science for at least a generation, maybe more, because if I was a young person looking back at what happened over the last 3 years, I would certainly be disinclined to trust either experts or politicians again in my life. And the damage to public health, I suspect the consequences of that as it unfolds will be that more people will die because they're now afraid of such things as vaccines that would have died if we would have just followed Sweden's example, for instance, and left people the hell alone. I don't know how many of you who are listening know this, but Sweden now has the least excess deaths in Europe. And so the Swedish model, which did involve vaccines, by the way, but no lockdowns and certainly no mask mandates. We lied through our teeth about masks. There's no evidence whatsoever from randomized controlled trials, which are the only form of trial that matter. We lied through our teeth about the utility of masks so that we could look like we were doing something, and that's on you, politicians, who pushed that. We also circumvented the scientific process while approving the vaccines, and we're going to pay a big price for that, and we're certainly not done paying that. And then I would say to the conservatives who are listening, we failed as conservatives because we did not abide by or attend to the law of unintended consequences, right? We had a crisis of unmeasured magnitude. That was the new illness. We put in incredibly restrictive policies to hypothetically cope with it. We lied about the fact that those policies were justified by science. We wreaked untold economic havoc on our society. We hurt the educational opportunities of children, and we failed to attend to the fact that the reaction to a crisis can produce a worse crisis than the crisis itself. So, all things considered, it's hard for me to see how we could have possibly, had we done nothing at all in the face of this so-called pandemic, things would have turned out better than they did. So I think there's ample room for all of us as citizens, and especially those of us who were leaders during this time, to be as ashamed of ourselves as we possibly could. And perhaps what you could remember from this particular talk is that in our panicked idiocy, we copied one of the most authoritarian societies that's ever existed on the planet, and that would be the Chinese Communist Party. So pretty damn pathetic, all things considered. We should seriously be ashamed of ourselves. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share those thoughts with you.
Ms. Jeffrey, can we begin with you stating your full name for the record and then spelling your first and last name for the record?
My name is Laura Jeffrey. It's spelled Laura Jeffery.
And do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth today?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, Ms. Jeffrey, my understanding is that you were quite a senior embalmer as far as embalmers in Canada go.
I'm the best kept secret in embalming.
You have been working as a funeral director, and that includes embalming, for 27 years now.
Yes.
Which I did the math. That would mean you started roughly in 1996.
I'm an old lady.
I started practicing law in 1995.
Well, then you're an older fellow too.
we share a long career. And for the past 5 years, my understanding is you would average roughly about 170,
yes.
I guess, I don't know what you call it.
I would embalm and care for 170 people that required embalming. I would care for many more that maybe weren't embalming, but I would care for them as well.
Right. Now, right, because if somebody's being cremated, then they don't go through an embalming process.
No, that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if you're buried or cremated. It depends on what you're doing beforehand.
Okay. Now, when COVID came along,
yes,
my understanding is you were working at a place which cared for approximately 600 deceased
yes.
persons a year?
Yes.
And in a year and a half, so COVID hits, so we're in, I guess, March of 2020, and a year and a half goes by.
Yes.
And you're still with this organization that cares with roughly 600 deceased persons a year.
Yes.
How many deaths did you see attributed,
7.
not caused, but attributed to COVID?
7.
And were there other comorbidities involved?
Of
with
course,
this?
yes. Routinely, the COVID cases that I would see would be people that had been suffering dementia for probably quite some time and living in a nursing home facility. And that's fairly typical in the winter. We would see that with any virus or any cold maybe that was going around, because those people are very vulnerable.
Now, what did you observe about the death rate when COVID swept through this land?
Nothing. There's nothing to observe. Nothing
Okay.
changed.
So nothing changed?
Oh, well, that's not true, actually. So lockdowns create a situation where suicides and drug overdoses escalated dramatically.
Now, what about the first lockdown?
The first lockdown wasn't as obvious. There may have been the odd, unusual death, but I mean, that also could have just been normal timing, because the first lockdown was the pajama party, right? The second lockdown was the problem. So the second lockdown, the escalation of suicide deaths and drug overdoses was obvious.
Okay,
Young people, middle-aged
you-
people.
And as an embalmer, I mean, you're aware of cause of death when you're
Yes.
treating somebody.
I mean, I don't always look, but I mean, sometimes you're very aware. You can't miss it.
Okay, so so the suicides and drug overdoses, they're
Yes.
obviously increasing in number in the second lockdown.
Second lockdown, yeah.
Now, my understanding is that you had a very unique experience with a 9-week period with a specific type of death. Can you share with us slowly
Okay.
what you witnessed and just how unusual that was?
Okay, so in 9 weeks, so one a week for 9 weeks, there was middle-aged women that were, well settled in their lives mostly, who didn't want to stay on Earth anymore. So they left by their choice and their hand. So they had children, they had spouses, they had homes, but the second lockdown was too much for them, so they left, and we cared for them. And it was awful, to be honest. Like each week one person would do that for no reason. They had children, so that was hard.
So these are mothers with children.
Yeah,
And
average people. Yeah, I mean, it could have been me, right? Except I don't have kids. But in a general sense, yes, it was a middle-aged woman that had children ranging, I found, aged like maybe 10 to 20, and then you're looking at that middle-aged woman, right? And she has a home and a husband and children. So that happened.
Had you ever in your career seen a suicide death
No.
from that type of person before?
No. Women don't do that.
So this just stuck out like a sore thumb.
Everybody noticed.
Now, my understanding is that you started seeing changes after the COVID-19 vaccines were
Yes.
introduced.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
It started in January of 2021, and at first I was seeing an anomaly in what we would call return. So you have to understand a little bit about embalming. Embalming, we have a vat, and then there's a hose, and the vat has a pump in it. And what we do is we use the human circulatory system that God gave us. So we go into that circulatory system. Generally, we start at the carotid, right? That's a major artery that goes not to your brain, but also to the top of your heart. And it pumps the fluid through. And then the return would be people's blood that's pumped back out through the venous system. And we open that and let it release. And the concept is to put preservation in and take out what would not preserve a body long term, so that we can present a person that is reasonable to them, their appearance that they should be, right? So when I was seeing the return, I started to notice anomalies in what the return was. So that went on for about 3-4 months. And the return was more viscous. And it's not like I hadn't seen that before, but you didn't see it consistently every single person, right? Now I'm seeing it every single person.
Now, you have to explain to us what more viscous is.
Viscous, thicker, darker, sticky. And that return, I call return, it's return blood, right? So that return blood was stickier, thicker, darker, and then I started seeing that return blood would have little tiny pieces of clot in it, and the clot would be like a currant jelly clot, but it's tiny pieces, like pinhead sized. But it was almost like polka dot coming out, right? So polka dot pattern, sticky vixus, more thicker blood, darker, and then these little pieces of clot that kind of look like a polka dot pattern sticking to the embalming table, and of course that goes down the drain, right? But it was just different. There was something different. I would call it maybe dirty blood, if you want to make a sort of a basic example, right? So the blood was dirtier. And at first, I'm really conscientious, right? So I notice things, and I'm known for that. So at first, I was sort of like, this is weird, right? But you can't, like, I'm an embalmer. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor, right? I'm an embalmer. But I notice things. And a lot of people do, and a lot of people don't. But in retrospect, there's an awful lot of people in my profession that are also saying the same thing. So they won't tell you that in person. They certainly wouldn't go public like this, but that's what they're telling me.
Did you see changes in persons that were dying after the vaccines were introduced?
Yes. So it was kind of horrifying. Well, it is horrifying. So there was an escalation of middle-aged people's deaths, like just average Canadian, came home from work, had dinner with the family, and died suddenly at home. So that was that went on for maybe a good month and a half, and usually an evening call, so what we call a night call, okay? You would send a removal team out, 2 people, because they're going into someone's home, right? So usually a night call or a night removal would be in the middle of the night. Like it might start at 1 o'clock in the morning, you might get one, you might not, right? And then there was a lengthy period of time, like many weeks, where these middle-aged people were dying kind of like right after dinner at their house with their families present. And they weren't being investigated. They were coming to the funeral home. And I was looking at this and I'm like, this should be investigated because it's an unusual death. It's an unexpected death. But no, it wasn't investigated. It was almost like they dialed it in and brought the person into our care at the funeral home, right? And then didn't worry about them. So
there's a couple of things there. So you were telling us that, excuse me, typically a call is around 1 a.m. or after 1 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, like middle of the night is when if you're going to have a night call happen, for some reason it always seems to be that 1 o'clock in the morning kind of time frame.
And prior to the vaccines, roughly how many calls would you guys have on a night?
You could get 1 in an evening, you could get 2, you could get none. And then for a while there it was every night, 1, 2, even maybe 3. Always completed before 11 o'clock at night. So my removal staff were loving that because they weren't getting called out of bed, right? Yeah, they thought that was marvelous. And I was saying, why can't you see the pattern? Like, so everything's a pattern, right? Like, we're not really all that different. None of us are. We think we are, but we're not. So when we die or when we breathe or when we're born, there's patterns. And as soon as you see an anomaly and a pattern, you should be going, why is there an anomaly? But nobody was asking, why is there an anomaly? And then I'm a funeral director, and it's not my job to ask, why is there an anomaly? But I was asking, right, like, why is there an anomaly in my mind? And so I started asking my coworkers, like, what did you see? Where were you? What was it like, right? Family there, after dinner, average people, average home. It was an anomaly, a big one, obvious one, but it was like everybody had blinders on, right? So I don't know why nobody noticed, but I noticed. I was rather concerned.
Now, my understanding is early on you had an experience with a 47-year-old man that it seemed unusual. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so
we're
okay,
back. Just so everybody knows, we were off air just because we lost our internet connection. So, Madison, I'm going to start you back where I asked you the questions as to what we could easily do to have made that situation of yours better.
I would have hoped that our leaders in our institutions would have allowed for discourse, allowed for conversation without silencing, allowed for us students to critically think and investigate, and to not treat us as dumb by just giving us slogans, but giving us scientific reasoning, scientific studies to back up what they were saying and what they were forcing us to do. And I think for the future, I think it'd be important for all of us to self-reflect on how we've treated people the last few years. Whether that was, actively treating people, saying things, or just passively watching as it unfolded. If we can have compassion for the individual rather than some abstract greater good, that would probably go a long way. And it would make us feel more supported as youth and as young adults.
Okay. Any last questions from the commissioners? No.
I guess we're taking a break again, but what do you do?
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. I'm the author of 3 books, Maps of Meaning, 12 Rules for Life, and Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. I've been asked by the Honorable Preston Manning to say a few words about our nation's response to COVID. So let's lay out what happened. We faced an unknown threat of indeterminate magnitude, so a new disability, and we copied the first mover, which was essentially communist China. And we also, our political leaders and ourselves as citizens, allowed our responsibility to be usurped by these experts in a time of hypothetical crisis. We then manipulated public opinion in the most egregious possible manner, using a collusion between corporation, primarily the pharmaceutical industry, government and media, who all colluded together to use fear to impose tyranny. And we did that not only by manipulating public opinion through the media, but by using opinion polls to sample that frightened public opinion, to justify the imposition of restrictions on our basic rights as a consequence of response to that public opinion, and then to lie in the aftermath of that and claim that that was all based on science. All of that was a lie, as I know full well from talking to people who were advising political figures, including conservative political figures, during the epidemic itself. We suspended our basic rights, including the rights to travel, the freedom of association, the right to bodily integrity, and there's barely a more fundamental right than that, and the right to freedom of speech. We did the latter particularly by persecuting people who dared to say anything against the panicked response to the hypothetical COVID epidemic. Here's a rule of thumb for everyone.
Welcome back to the National Citizens Inquiry. We apologize. Actually, the internet has gone down now, I think, 3 times in the last half hour. So please be patient with us. Hopefully things will go okay from here on. Our next witness is Mallory Flank. Mallory, I can see you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
And I can hear you also. I'd like to start by asking you to state your full name for the record, spelling your first and last name.
It's Mallory Flank, Mike Alpha, Lima Lima, Oscar Romeo Yankee, and then Foxtrot Lima Alpha November Kilo.
And Mallory, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, yes.
Now, Mallory, you're here to share about your experience with the vaccine. I'd like to start by asking why you chose to get vaccinated.
I was actually mandated for the vaccine in Alberta. It was required for all healthcare professionals. So in order to work, I had to be vaccinated.
And I'll just back up. I forgot to introduce that. So you were a critical care paramedic deployed overseas. You were also a medical student.
Yes.
So,
Yes, I was.
yeah, so when you say it was mandated, you mean as a healthcare worker, it was mandated for you?
Yes, it was mandated for me.
Okay. So that's why you chose to get vaccinated. Can you tell us when? Or I can lead you on that if you want. I know it's May 14th, 2021.
It's just over 2 years now. So yeah, it was definitely May 14th, 2021.
So tell us what happened.
So within 10 minutes of getting the vaccine, I had an anaphylactic reaction to the vaccine. I started off with hives, hoarse voice, started coughing. I had some stridor, which is that nice high-pitched squeal that comes out when your throat starts to swell. My tongue was swollen, face was swollen. Thankfully, we had some medication and stuff with us, so we were able to mitigate most of the reaction right away. Following that point, I ended up having more reactions. The following day, I ended up going into the ER utilizing epinephrine.
And I'm just going to slow you down. So the first day, you're having these reactions. What in addition started happening the second day?
The second day, the reaction was worse. So in that sense, we kind of weren't really expecting it to go like that, but the reaction was infinitely worse to the point where I had to use an EpiPen. After that happened, we went to the hospital. Upon getting into the hospital, I was kind of rushed in on that one. I was given more epinephrine, a bunch of antihistamines, some steroids, and then watched for a bit and then sent home.
Okay. So you end up in the hospital that day. So that's May 15th. Now,
yes.
My understanding is basically you were in the hospital every day until you were admitted, like May 15th to May 20th. Can you kind of walk us through those days and tell us what happened?
For sure. So essentially the same thing was happening, except they were just randomly coming on. We weren't really understanding what was going on. On a daily basis, I was ending up having to use EpiPens because, of course, I was sent home with epinephrine from the first time I went to the hospital. So the Sunday, same thing happened again. Ended up back in the hospital. Ended up getting kind of the same role with, the steroids, the antihistamines, more epinephrine, sent home. That happened every single day. And then when we switched up hospitals because we were told to avoid our community hospital because they weren't well equipped for airway issues. So they said if there are any airway issues, try to go past and go to a bigger facility. So that's what we did. And on that one, I think it was 3 EpiPens on the way into the hospital.
So I'm just going to slow you down. Were you prior to being vaccinated? Would you be using EpiPens?
No.
Did you even have EpiPens?
No.
Okay, so the hospital is sending you home with a lot of EpiPens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a prescription for unlimited.
Okay, and just for those that would be watching your testimony that aren't familiar with what an EpiPen is, can you explain to them what an EpiPen is and why it's so important?
For sure. So this is what it looks like. But the EpiPens are set with a specific dose amount of epinephrine. The epinephrine is designed to kind of help take down the swelling. That way that your airway, like if you can't breathe, it should take it away enough that you're able to get some air in. It's not an end-all be-all, though. Like I've had to use upwards of 6+. There was one day I think I had 10. So it's equipped to stop reactions, but at the same time, it is a very limited time frame that it does it in.
And
so
I'm just going to slow you down again. Like if somebody, like we hear about people that are allergic to bees, like where they're going to die if they get, that's what they have to carry with them every day in case they get stung. And if they don't get that in, they're not going to be able to breathe.
Yes, that's exactly it.
You were experiencing this like up to 10 times a day where you wouldn't be able to breathe unless you used an EpiPen.
Yes.
Okay, and I just wanted people to understand how serious what you're going through is, and so I'm sorry I'll let you carry on, but I think it's important that people to understand this is actually life and death if
Yes,
you don't
it's-
have an EpiPen?
Yeah, I would have died if I hadn't had an EpiPen with me. Like even now, I have to carry 6 with me at any given time. So it's very important to have around. In that first week, I mean, we ended up bypassing and going to a different facility. The same thing kind of happened there. Same medications given, several rounds of Epi, discharged again. Went back the next day actually by ambulance because I had a massive reaction trying to get a prescription for antihistamines that was given to me the previous day. And when we went in there, the poor pharmacist, she was actually on the phone with the GP that was assisting with what was going on with me, and getting orders and then throwing us medication that could be injected. So like injectable Benadryl, several EpiPens, then called EMS, went in by EMS. They gave, I think, 2 rounds of Epi in the ambulance. Went back. Once we got to the hospital, another round of epinephrine, more IV, antihistamines. And then at that point, I had a scope that was done about 3 hours past being treated. So of course, they just saw redness and whatnot in there. But I was supposed to be admitted on that one. I was told by the ER physician, who was the same one as the previous day. Unfortunately, this time when he saw me when I came in, he's like, "Oh, it's you again," and kind of rolled his eyes and then didn't treat the situation as seriously as the previous day, which I don't understand what happened with this change in mentality for it. However, in there again, the nurses were advocating for me. I kind of hung out in there. Reactions happened a couple of times. I was treated for 2 of them, and then another one happened, and they were kind of hemming and hawing about actually doing any treatment. We ended up being treated for it eventually, but again, then discharged afterwards. He changed his mind. So he discharged me again. And then finally, on the Friday, I was admitted to the university hospital.
So that would be May 21st by my count. And so your
Yes.
vaccination was on May 14th. So basically for 7 days, you were having to go to the hospital every single day, and then finally they just admit you.
Yeah, even my partner injected me with Epi in the middle of the night because I didn't wake up to my airway being compromised. The high-pitched squeal from the stridor woke him up.
How long were you in the hospital before you were released?
I was in the hospital for 7 days, 5 of which were in the ICU.
Okay, so tell us about that. I mean, ICU, that means you're on death's door without like a one-on-one nurse.
Yes, so I had initially been put into what they call eye care, which is like an intermediate version of it, where I'm completely monitored, but the nurses aren't one-to-one. But I had so many calls with the medical emergency team because I needed epinephrine and immediate intervention for reactions, that it got to the point where I was too unstable and to be able to kind of sit there in that area, because that team was called, I think, 6 times prior to me being put into the ICU. So they brought me down to the ICU so that I could have that close monitoring. So when a reaction happened, they could be right there. And they had everything available to them instead of being locked up in cabinets. My partner did have to come and treat me a couple of times. He had medication with him because in IMCU, they don't have the stuff immediately available. And because of that, any delay, of course, causes bigger issues. So when they weren't able to source the medication, they weren't giving me the medication that I required on time, that kind of stuff, it all kind of compounded, and then reactions would start to happen. And then, of course, the Met team would be called, the team would come in, and then they would treat according to what they had or just watch, whichever, because most of the time we had it treated with Epi by the time they got there. And then finally, after having to tell one of the physicians exactly what our background was and what my background was, he finally went, "Oh, she's like me, just without the certificate," and this is coming from an ICU physician. And he said, "Okay."
I'm just going to slow you down there for a second. So what are you reacting to? Because it's your throat that's swelling, am I right?
Yeah.
What are you reacting to where you're needing this constant epinephrine?
So we did find out a couple of months later that I do have a severe allergy to the S1 protein. That is what was causing the reactions, and because
and
the
to
mRNA
slow you down,
vaccine,
this protein is in the vaccine, right?
it is, and it develops. It's what is developed by the mRNA vaccine, so that you can create the antibodies to attack it, which means your antibodies also have a component of it. So as long as there's even a tiny version of the S1 protein in my body, I will react to it.
So for 2 weeks, you're basically where you could die at any time, and except you're getting these EpiPens, and it's death by suffocation. What was that experience like for you emotionally and mentally?
It's scary. I mean, I've transported really sick patients. I've been a part of people with anaphylactic reactions and that kind of stuff. But I was not ever anticipating to be someone to experience something like this. To have it happen so frequently on a daily basis is scary. I don't know what's going to happen. Even now, I don't know what's going to happen. When it does happen, you fear for your life. I hate to say this, I've kind of gotten used to it a little bit. It's not as right in your face, but that initial phase is so scary. I didn't think I would ever see my children grow up. I thought the last time that I spoke to them, prior to going into the ICU, was the last time I would ever see them again. It's a horrible, horrible experience. So incredibly difficult to put into words what it's like to just, I guess, to showcase it would be the equivalent of, in the movies where they, mobsters and stuff like that, they'll put a plastic bag over somebody's face, and then you can see them trying to suck in the air and there's nothing there and they're panicking and scratching at their neck. That's what it's like. Even now, I have to do this to pull my shirt and stuff away from my neck as it swells. You can probably see now my neck is actually swollen a little bit. But it's very, very scary. And it's scary for people around you that know you, too, especially when your hands are tied and you can't do anything to help.
Do you mind sharing us discussing the email you sent me earlier today?
Oh, not at all.
Okay, so basically you knew you were going to be testifying, and you basically were communicating that you're having a bad day and you might actually have an attack while you're testifying, which is why you have an EpiPen right there. It's just because otherwise you could die in front of us.
Yeah. So I thought I would give you the heads up just in case. You hear my voice is changing a little bit. The EpiPen, I've got an EpiPen, I've got even IV Benadryl, and I have half bag of fluid that's behind me that's still running.
So what's and I'm sorry, I didn't even notice. So you have an IV bag behind you that's running, so it's dripping into you. What's in the bag?
It's just saline at the moment, but I have drawn up medication like Benadryl, the injectable version, because I have a central line still in.
Okay, so can you just show us that again for the camera? So this is normal for you, right? Is to have an IV line into your arm so that you can inject Benadryl directly into your system rather than have to ingest it because your throat will be constricting.
Yes, and to provide fluids and whatnot. After a reaction, most often I'm not able to eat or digest stuff, and the more reactions that happen, the worse that gets. So I can't break down pill capsules. I drink a lot of the medication. The IV stuff works infinitely faster as well, because I don't have time with some of them, where I've gone unconscious in less than 30 seconds. Even the other day, somebody was smoking outside, and the door was partially open, and the smoke came in. I ran to the door to close it, managed to close the door and then just collapsed down because I was so dizzy that my dog brought me an EpiPen and helped me with its administration. So it is dangerous. Like, it's scary and dangerous, and little things set it off. So it's difficult to live with. I'm thankful for having the central line in right now because it's what is saving my life when it comes to having to administer medication quickly.
Yeah, and I just want people to understand it has been a full 2 years since your single shot.
Yes. 2 years. Now it caused autoimmune disorders. So essentially it's a secondary mast cell activation syndrome where my body attacks itself. It also causes me to be reactive to pretty much everything in my environment. So they call it being allergic to life. Prior to this, I had 3 allergies to medications.
Right, okay.
Now,
So you had, when you say 3 allergies, you mean you were allergic to 3 drugs?
yes.
So you weren't allergic to cats or dogs or pollen or anything like that. You were able to go out and do whatever you wanted.
Yes.
Until
Yep.
May 14th, 2021.
Yes.
And then you haven't had a single day off.
That single day, and now every single day, I have reactions. It doesn't stop. I'm on a lot of high-dose antihistamines and medications to try to suppress my the mast cell response. Lots of supplements, specialized diet. I get exercise-induced anaphylaxis, so I have to be careful. My heart rate can't go above 110, otherwise it causes a reaction. Stress will cause it. Environmental stuff, like the smoke right now is predominantly what the issue is. And even yesterday, the smoke in general has been pretty bad, but it causes, again, reactions that require epinephrine and Benadryl. And
I'll just slow you down. So because you live in Alberta, and people here in Ottawa and people online may not understand that there are forest fires happening in Alberta, and so there's smoke in the city you live in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Almost the whole province is on fire. Like we're well coated in smoke and ash across the province. So it's pretty bad here at this point. I think we're on very severe is the risk level for us. It's a 10 plus.
Okay.
So
now you've told us that you've got mast cell activation syndrome, which is basically makes you allergic to life. Mm-hmm. I wanted to just, before we go on, is you had an episode where you actually became allergic to your own hair. Yes. Yeah. Can you tell us about that? And then I'm going to pull up some photos from your website.
For sure. So I think it was August 2021, I had been progressively becoming more allergic to stuff as we went along. So I would all of a sudden have reactions to random things that I had never been allergic to ever in my life. And then we at one point, like something weird was going on, but I was developing like sores and stuff on my head around my hair follicle. And it turned out that the mast cells were actually attacking my hair follicle. So I still have some bald spots and whatnot from it, but because of that, my hair would fall out. So we just kind of went to the point where we're like, well, we'll just shave your head and see what happens, which helped exponentially, because even my hair touching my neck or my face would cause swelling in that area. So it was completely out of the blue. Now I use shampoo that has Benadryl in it to kind of mitigate that aspect. But it was, again, something that we didn't even consider, and something that's so odd, right? But it's the epitome of your body attacking itself.
Okay, I'm going to pull up some pictures. And so, David, if you want to put the exhibit up that I have on the computer at the lawyer's table up. So now this is, you have a website because you want to share your story with people. And we've entered your web page as Exhibit OT12. And can you just explain to us these two pictures here, and then I'll scroll down to the next two pictures.
For sure. So this is the first picture is my daughter and I. This is before getting the vaccine, so it is in early 2021. And the following picture is partially of a reaction. So that's some of the swelling that's from a reaction, and it is after my head was shaved. If it looks at the back, I was in the hospital at that time. So that is a photo of me in the hospital having a reaction with my face swelling up completely.
Okay.
And in this time frame, like my weight now fluctuates can fluctuate up to 30 pounds in 24 hours from just swelling alone. So this is, again, one of those incidents that I had been put on steroids as well, so it didn't help. This actually makes that part infinitely worse. So there's, yes, just a lot of swelling.
Okay, so I'm going to scroll down, and I'm thankful that you had sense of humor, even doing the Dr. Evil pose.
Yeah, I had to.
So share with us these two pictures. So
the first one is a picture towards the end of my time frame when I was working overseas. So that is late 2020.
And that's when you're working basically as an emergency paramedic overseas.
Yes. Yeah.
A critical care paramedic.
Yes. And then the next picture is actually 2 days after we had shaved my head, when all the swelling had gone down out of my face. So we had taken a picture then just to have like a before and after of what had happened. We were joking around because, I mean, it's weird having a shaved head when you've never had one before.
Right, and so so for the swelling, so I'll just scroll up so people can compare. So everyone just have a look at the Dr. Evil shot, and again, it's important to have a sense of humor. So you see the difference there in swelling. So that's why you put those pictures on your website, is you wanted us to understand, or just anyone to understand what you were experiencing. So David, you can take that down, and so we can see Mallory again. So Mallory, you told us about mast cell activation syndrome. My understanding is you also have POTS. And can you tell us about that and what that stands for?
For sure. So POTS is, again, an autoimmune disorder. It is a disorder where your nervous system, its automatic functions don't function as well. And in my sense, what it does is, so it's postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So postural meaning the changes in position make my heart rate go extremely high. And so if I go from laying down to sitting or standing, my heart rate could go, say, from 50 to 130. The blood doesn't return as easily back to my heart to be able to get to my brain. So then, of course, it causes a lot of dizziness. You get a lot of kind of pressure in your head. You can, sometimes I've passed out from it. You get like a tinnitus sound afterwards. So you get that high pitched like whistle for quite a while in your ears. It can cause extreme pain in your head with that pressure. And then finally, if I were to sit down or return to the previous position, it would go away within about 30 seconds. But again, each time I have to get up, I now have to get into a position and wait in that position in order to be able to get up into another position. So if I'm laying in bed, I have to sit up and wait. And then I have to stand up and wait. And then I can go and walk around. So it's very frustrating, but.
Okay. I want to now talk about your interaction with the Alberta healthcare system, because my understanding is for the first time in your life you got calls from AHS, which stands for Alberta Health Services. They never call you for any other purpose, but they call you for the purpose of your vaccination. And can you tell us about those calls? And then I also want you to tell us about doctors filling out reports and whether you found those reports to be veracious.
Okay. So the calls that I got, Originally the first two were from a nurse who was calling in regards to the vaccine reaction. So she got all the information down. She found out that I was still having reactions on a daily basis and that we were kind of trying to find help to deal with it. She called a second time just to see if I was still having reactions and then to see if anything else had progressed. So she was lovely. She did say that the immunologist would potentially call if they thought it was like an important aspect for them to make contact on. The immunologist did call several months later, and at the time I was in really bad condition. I was having multiple reactions per day. Even when she called, I had just had a reaction, so I was exhausted in speaking with her. And on that phone call, as I was speaking, she'd be like, and then I would get interrupted, and she would say, well, one of the comments was, there was a woman in ICU that had a reaction to the first shot, but she received her second shot successfully, which to me at that time that didn't really pertain to the situation. Also, everybody's different. Chances are that woman and I do not have the same physiology or had the same response. We don't know why she was in ICU, the whole 9 yards.
Right. So, but just to be clear, she actually told you to get the second shot, didn't she?
She did, yeah. So she told me that I needed to get the second shot. She wanted me to schedule a second shot with her right there. She said, well, if you are that so scared about this, I can have the pharmacist split the dose in half, and I can stand there and watch while they give it.
So I just want to make sure that I understand what you're telling us. So you've basically become completely disabled where you're only alive on a daily basis because you're jabbing EpiPens into yourself. And the immunologist is telling you to go and get a second shot.
Yes.
Had this immunologist ever seen you as a patient?
No.
Just phoning from AHS and telling you to get a second shot?
Yes. And then she phoned my GP at the time as well.
To tell your GP to tell you to get a second shot?
Yeah.
Now, my understanding is you have concerns about some of the reports the doctors have written. Can you share with us that?
Yes. So when I was admitted into the hospital for a month, majority of the time the physicians wouldn't be around when reactions happened. However, the reports that went in said that, oh yeah, she had all these reactions. We didn't see anything happen on our full assessment. So we think that, we don't know exactly what's going on, and she's administering Epi 3 times a day all of the time. She's administering Benadryl all of the time, so we think that she has an addiction to Benadryl. We have concerns that this is, like psychiatric in nature, and essentially it was a lot of, we saw nothing happen. Now, when you look at the nurses' notes document all of the swelling and documents that they were unable to get a hold of the physicians. It was documented that they were not able to get medication orders because the doctors refused to give them. There were times that it was documented that I didn't have a reaction, and yet because medication was withheld for so long for the reaction, I was out like vomiting everywhere in the room, not able to breathe, and just like everything's coming out. It was ridiculous, completely swollen, my eyes swollen shut. So there's the reports that went, like those are the progress notes that the physicians do. And those are the notes that go to the specialists. Those were sent to the specialists. They didn't include the fact that psychiatric evaluations had been done, and I had been completely told that, or we had been told that everything was fine, that the reactions were actually happening, that they couldn't have been induced in any other manner. Like, it's not psychiatric in nature. So it was really frustrating to see that they had actually changed everything had an assessment. None of the physicians actually did a full assessment, barring one. One out of the 9 did a head-to-toe assessment.
Okay.
The others, even if they came up to talk to me and they would document that they did a full assessment and what they found, but there was no assessment actually completed.
And I'm just going to, we're getting a little short on time, but I don't want you to I want a full answer on this next question, and then I'm going to lead you on some financial stuff. So, but I want you to take your time on explaining the impact on your children and on you, because it's affected your ability to care for them, and I want you to share that with us.
Yes. So my daughter's like starting off, right? We didn't really know what was going on. I unfortunately was unable to look after them because of how sick I was. So I lost a lot of parenting time. Some of the reactions happened in front of my kids. One was caused because my daughters had cats at the time, and I all of a sudden was deathly allergic to cats. And her jacket was in the bathroom, and I had gone into the washroom for maybe 10 seconds and had a massive reaction, came out, and I was having a hard time breathing. I was turning gray. My lips were blue, and my daughters were right there in front of me. So my partner, of course, explained what was going on. He put in an IV and treated me. He asked them to go in the other room, and then he went and he spoke to them afterwards. So we've had to try to normalize what's going on with me because of the number of times I've had reactions. So they're very well versed now with EpiPens and stuff like that. And that's just, general knowledge wise, it's wonderful, but I have been kind of pushed on by the court system and by my ex, in the sense that me being the way that I am, they don't want to deem it as being normal. That if I have to treat something, that the kids can't ever see anything that's happening. I can't show them when I'm sick. I can't show them that I'm having a reaction, all because it shouldn't ever be normalized that this is happening. These are permanent issues.
I just want to stop. So you're in family court, and the family court's basically telling you you can't live the life that you have now been dealt in front of your kids.
And if I have to go away for treatment, if it's for an extended period of time, I would have to reapply for things like parenting and whatnot when I come back. There's I've lost so much time with them. The more I react, the sicker I get, and then I can't look after them. It's horrible to know that they're so close, yet I can't be with them because I'm too sick to be able to facilitate what they need.
No, just hang on a second. We've lost sound, so just hang on a second. So, can you talk again? I think we've got it back. No, yeah, there we go. Yeah, sorry.
Even this week, I have had to give up parenting time because of the smoke, and I can't leave the house. So I can't facilitate anything for them. If people come in and out, it brings smoke into the house, and then I have anaphylactic reactions. So it's a very difficult balance. My daughters want to bring friends over, and they love animals and whatnot. Of course, we have parameters in place, and for safety purposes, we're able to mitigate a lot of the stuff so that they have some normalcy for everything. But again, at the same time, things like wildfires and stuff like that, things that I can't predict, I end up losing parenting time because of it, because I can't facilitate being a parent. I miss that time. I can't advocate for what they need. And then it goes into the court system as, she's too sick to do this and do that. Is she well enough to make decisions? Is she well enough to actually be a parent? And it's hard to hear that because this isn't something that I, asked for to begin with. Like, nobody would ask for something like that. But it came off of me doing what I thought was right at the time and mandated so that I could facilitate, bringing in income to support our family. And then all of this stuff happening and me not being able to see my daughters, having to go and stay with my parents in a different province, having to seek out of province care. Again, time frame away from my kids. And it's like my partner has lost jobs. My parents have had difficulty with this as well. And then to see what happens on top of that, like my daughters saw me almost die a couple of times. They're 11 and 13. So they were 9 and 11 at the time that this started. And that's not something a kid should ever have to see. They should never have to see their parents go through something like that in front of them over and over again. And it's like, at that time, of course, we didn't have control over it, so the reactions were much worse, and we couldn't anticipate when they were coming. Now it's easier and it's trackable, but to have them see that and have to deal with that and not know, like when I talk to them on the phone, they can see when a reaction's happening, or if I'm not feeling well, have them worried because they don't know if they get to see me again. Even in the hospital, there was one really bad reaction that wasn't treated properly to begin with, and I thought that was the last one that I was going to have. I thought that the conversation I had with them 3 days prior to that was the last one I would ever have.
Okay.
It's horrible.
I'm just going to rush through the financial stuff just so that it makes it into the record. But you had been employed by the U.S. government in casualty evacuations for special evacuations medical team, basically, war zone stuff. Mm-hmm. And you were also a medical student, and because of this, you can't work and you couldn't be a medical student. Your parents have basically used up an enormous amount of their savings to help you out. You've paid over $200,000 out of pocket for treatments, and you're still extremely sick, and it's really too expensive for you to live on the small disability pension that you're now on. So yep. This has just been a financial disaster for you and your family.
Yes, absolutely. It's destroyed everything. Like, we've lost all of that we have. We used all of my pension that I had built for years, used all of that to pay for medical. We've, like you said, my parents' retirement fund, again, used all of that for medical. We've had to, I still have to pay out of pocket for stuff that's, like, I need to see a specialist in the States. That, again, comes out of pocket. Nothing's really been covered, only recently, so it's only been a few weeks that I was actually approved for the provincial disability. And this is 2 years later. And it's off of course, the diagnosis overarching being post-vaccine reaction syndrome. And this, like, how do you expect to function? My costs for medication alone, we're sitting over $8,000 a month. Like, now, of course, a lot of it is covered. It's not all covered, but I require specialized purification systems, specialized water treatment systems. All of the stuff that can be used in the house for cleaning, that stuff has to be specially ordered. When it comes to clothing, shampoo, conditioner, that kind of stuff, personal care items, all has to be specially ordered. There's nothing in our life that I can use that is commercial. And we've tried over and over again to be able to find ways around it that were cheaper, easier, that kind of stuff. And we can't. And
Mallory, I'm just going to, for time, I'm just going to have to cut that short, and I'm going to ask the commissioners if they have any questions for you, and they do.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Plank. Thank you very much for sharing with us your very touching horror story with a touch of humor. I mean, I appreciate that you still struggle to keep up with that. So my first question is, did I understood well from your testimony that they were asking you to get a second shot? Does that imply that they didn't appreciate the seriousness of the side effect from the first shot? Did they acknowledge it at all?
There was no acknowledgement whatsoever on what I said and what was documented for what was going on. It was just a blatant, you could hear her kind of writing down a few things. And then, okay, so when you get so we're going to schedule your second shot. And there was no ask or no follow-up of, hey, maybe we need to get you in to see her, whoever, as an immunologist, to kind of nail down what was going on, or go to one of the adverse vaccine reaction clinics. There was none of that. After that conversation with her, my report was removed from the provincial system, and so nobody can find it anymore. No physicians have been able to access it since that point. It was like I didn't exist. So the reaction didn't exist. Moderna didn't find out actually until a couple of months ago when I contacted them. So it was a blatant, you're getting the second shot. And any way to get it done was how it was going to happen.
So does that follow that the healthcare system will never compensate for vaccine injury in your case?
I'm not sure. I think, vaccine reactions happen all the time. They've happened with every vaccine. We should have been learning from this one, not just blockading what was going on with it. There was a huge stigma attached to it. There still is. It's not as bad as it was before, but during that time frame, as soon as anyone found out that this came from the vaccine, I wouldn't get treated, or I would be treated completely differently. And it became really frustrating. And the fact that we couldn't actually get proper treatment was also a big component of it. So it has, I guess, assisted in making me permanently like this. But the Alberta government, of course, is who approves the disability stuff. So and when my application went into AISH, which is the disability component, it went in as post-vaccine reaction syndrome, and that is what I was approved on. So I think the acceptance is there from that side of things, but it'll be a matter of still working through, and it's practitioner dependent, so it's a little bit difficult. It's hit or miss if I end up going into the hospital. But now I carry a wad of paperwork and assigned protocol and stuff like that, so I'm treated properly versus having to explain everything over and over again and then getting the dodgy, maybe we'll get psyched down and we'll get them to talk to her first and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know if it'll change anybody's mind. I'm hoping the province takes it into consideration as to what's going on, that there are a lot of people that have had issues. So that recognition, I'm hoping will come full loop, but it is up to those who are in charge and those who want to encompass and learn. But you can't learn unless you accept and acknowledge. So
what's the prognostic for your current situation? Is there any hope that this will improve over time with any specific treatment, or is it something that is completely, for the time being, not well understood?
Right now, they're saying it's not well understood because I have a kind of an off variant of mast cell. It's a very multi-level immune response, so they don't really know what's going to happen. They do know, now that it's been like this for 2 years, we haven't really seen improvement unless I can live completely free of any type of allergen or trigger and not exacerbated in any way. The symptoms can kind of resolve. I still have reactions, but they don't escalate as quickly. But then if I'm exposed over and over again, it starts getting back to the way it was right at the beginning. So it's very hit or miss right now. There are treatments. If I had actually been treated in hospital properly in the first month, I would have been completely fine. This wouldn't have escalated to the point that it is right now and become permanent. There are treatments that will suppress my immune system. I still haven't been able to get access to them because no one will take my case. So it's a little hard when you can't get someone who's actually willing to look at the fact that it did come from the vaccine and that it is a huge problem and that there are like tons and tons of symptoms and it's dangerous. We're still waiting on that fact to be able to access the proper testing and the treatment to go with it. With that treatment, it could potentially allow me to come off of some of the medications, live a little bit more normally. I still have to be well aware of the allergens and triggers and still have a lot of safety mechanisms in place, but it could have like a better effect for me. Outside of that, there isn't anything else. I will be like this for the rest of my life. So and we don't know how long that actually is.
I'm wondering when you took the decision to get vaccinated because of your work and that you didn't want to lose, but you had already allergy condition before the vaccination. So were you specifically warned that under those conditions you might experience more side effect because of your previous condition?
No, not at all. There was no warning of it. We did a ton of research on the vaccines. The reason I used Moderna was because Pfizer had couldn't guarantee that there wasn't penicillin or sulfonamides in their vaccine, and I had allergies to both of those. So we stepped away from that one and utilized Moderna. But not once was anything ever said that would cause any extra reactivity. We did find a study afterwards that showcased people with those types of allergies, especially female, had a higher incidence of severe reactions to the vaccine, which would have been nice to know ahead of time. But again, it was a small group of individuals off of one of the primary studies, but nobody said anything here. It was actually in the UK, it was part of their algorithm. Where it was one of those, you need to see somebody before you get it. Here it was just get vaccinated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Mallory, there being no further questions, on behalf of the National Citizens Inquiry, I sincerely thank you for coming and sharing your story today. It's been very valuable.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Our next witness is going to be quite unusual, so let me explain what's going to happen first. This is a fellow who is severely disabled. He is in a wheelchair, and we're just going to put his picture up on the screen. And what he does is I can ask him a question, he will hear it, and then he types into his computer, and the computer then becomes a person and takes the typed message and gives it to us audibly. So I'm going to be leading him more than I normally would. So I'll try to give a question with some information in it that he can answer yes or no. So that's what's going to happen now. I believe he is on on the feed right now. Oh, and there's a picture of him up there. So let me do an oath with him first. Adam, your name is Adam Zimpel, spelled ADAMZIMPEL. And do you promise that the testimony you will give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That was a yes into the phone. Okay. Let me just explain who you are to the commissioners, and then we'll see how we can do this. You're a 39-year-old man who's severely disabled, and in early 2020, you got a job working as a travel agent, which was your dream job. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. The clicking that you hear, by the way, is his typing on his computer. Because of the COVID in 2020, there was a declaration of a state of emergency in Ontario, and at that point, you basically lost this job as a travel agent. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. At that point, your life routine significantly altered in the sense that you lost all of your personal support workers and your mother had to become your primary caregiver. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because you had worked from home as the travel agent, in the evenings you normally would like to go out and socialize, but once the mandates came in, that was taken away from you. Is that correct?
Yes.
You never did get the so-called vaccination, and you refused to take it. And at this point, you are still not so-called vaccinated. Is that correct?
Yes.
As the lockdown continued and the passport system was rolled out, not having taken the jab, you would not have been able to do much in the evenings, even if you had been able to go out. Is that correct?
Yes.
I think it's pretty obvious that you've been impacted far more than certainly most people would have been impacted by this, these mandates and whatnot. At this point, I think I will let you tell us anything else that you would like. We will listen for the computer clicks, and at this point also, perhaps the commissioners could be thinking of any questions they might have. So perhaps you could do that for us, and if you have your mother or someone there, perhaps she could indicate to us when you're done.
Like to. Eat. Essay. Local. Restaurant. Like. Neighborhood. That. Was. Brutally. Taken. Away. I'd like to eat at a local restaurant like Neighborhood that was brutally taken away. Even. McDonald's. Was. Deemed. Dangerous. Dangerous. Even McDonald's was deemed dangerous. During the weekend. I. Like to. Go. Downtown. Downtown. During the weekend, I'd like to go downtown. That. Was. Deep. Deemed. Unhealthy. Unhealthy. That was deemed unhealthy. Wow. altering, routine, is, are, for, any, person, today, disable, it, is, especially, unbearable, unbearable. While altering routines is hard for any person, to the disabled it is especially unbearable.
Okay. How do we get the question to be? Yeah. Did you get what he said?
I, or, never, afraid, they, virus, we, even, drove, to, empty, hospital, fence, they, height, something, supposed, pandemic, pandemic. My mother and I were never afraid of the virus. We even drove to empty hospitals at the height of the supposed pandemic. Ghost. Hospital. No. Ambulances. Nowadays. There are. Lot of. Ambulances. Because. Of the. Say. Effective. Vaccine. Vaccine. Nowadays, there are a lot of ambulances because of the safe, effective vaccine.
Okay. Do we have anything we can tell the commissioners here? Okay. Okay, I have 3 questions from the commissioners. So let me ask the first one, and then we'll stop and get your response. Did your support workers stop coming because they were afraid of the virus? I'll say that again. Did your support workers stop coming because they were afraid of the virus? Okay, go ahead.
Mine. And. Who is? A. Doctor. From. Poland. Strategy. order. Mistake. Letting. Down. Go. My aunt, who is a doctor from Poland, ordered us and I made the mistake of letting them go. Say. It is. Biggest. Mistake. Mine. Lie. Lie. I think it is biggest mistake of my life.
Is he done? Did we get the answer? Okay. Okay, thank you for that. I think we have your answer. It was what? Can we tell them? Okay, I think we have your answers here. So, given the lateness of the hour, thank you very much for your testimony on behalf of the National Citizens Inquiry. And we wish you the very best in the future with your job search and all the rest of your situation. Thank you again. Yes, Mr. Tasir Otabachi. I hope I didn't mangle that too badly. I'm Wayne Lenhart, and I'll be asking you the questions today. Could you spell your name, your full name, and then I'll do an oath with you.
First of all, hello everyone. My full name is Mohammed Tisir Otahbachi.
Okay, and could you spell that for us?
Yes, so it's written, my first name is M space Tisir, and my last name is Otahbachi.
And do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I will tell you the 1 trillion billion% person the truth and exactly what I've been through and what happened with me so far.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Maybe I'll just start you in 2021, where I think your issues happened after the vaccine. So maybe just tell her your story, and I'll stop you if I need to.
Yes. So since the government of Canada, they put many restrictions on everybody, on Canadians, preventing us going to grocery shopping, going to hospitals, working, and doing many things. So we had to take the vaccine, and they were pushing us indirectly or directly to take the vaccine. And as soon as my wife, she was pregnant at that time, and she has regular visits to her doctor and the hospital, so we had to take the vaccine. So on 15th of July, 2021, I took the first shot of the COVID vaccine, Moderna. 10 days later, exactly, there is a tiny, small pupil started on my right hand, and that pupil has a yellow liquid. So at the beginning, I never recognized or doubted that pupil, it's because of the COVID vaccine at all. So I went to the pharmacy because I don't have any family doctor or any other doctor, either in Quebec or any other province. I went to the pharmacy, and then I've seen the pharmacist, and then they gave me like a CeraVe cream to apply like 3 times daily on it. I was doing that, but unfortunately, that pupil was getting bigger and bigger every day. Until 13th of August, 2021, I got my second shot of the Moderna COVID vaccine. Then 48 hours later, exactly, almost the whole of my body got the same reaction. And my body was feeling, if you take your body, your full body, and just throw it out in the fire. That's the feeling of my body, how it was. So at that time, actually, I went to the hospital, to Gatineau Hospital, and I did wait for almost 23 hours without seeing any doctor. They asked me just to wait outside on the seat, and there's no doctors to see at all. When we asked the receptionist over there, she said now 9.5 hours left to see a doctor. If I like, I can go to any walk-in clinic or to any other clinic to see a doctor. So I gave up. I went back to the pharmacy again, and then the pharmacist has checked on my body, my hands. They gave me different creams from over the shelf, and the pharmacist, he told me, you have to see a doctor as soon as possible because there is something wrong is going on your body. Then here, my journey started. I was looking for any family doctor or any doctor in Quebec. And I think it's much easier to win a lotto, $20 million, than to find any family doctor or any doctor in Quebec. So for 8 months, I was looking for any doctor in Quebec with helping of some people. They are working at the government in Quebec, but nothing happened. It was with negative results. In September 2021, I was unable to work. I used to work as a mover, like a moving furnitures and a Uber driver. At that time, actually, my body was burning. I was unable to take a shower, wash my hands, my body, for more than 18 months so far. So tell me, please, who's in the world can handle that? But I did handle it.
Okay, so to summarize then, the problem was you had some sort of a skin reaction. Were you able to shower and take baths and that type of thing?
I was using a water wipes 99.9% for the babies to clean my body.
Have any of those symptoms resolved yet? Are they still bothering you?
They are still bothering me
Okay.
because right now I'm living on an injection. It's called the Debexent, and I have to take this injection for the rest of my life. I have to take it twice a month. So once I take an injection, it gives me some relief for 10, 12 days. And then after that, if I don't take the second or the next one, the reaction, it gets back exactly as the beginning. Like I feel I never get anything or any improvement.
Do they know when the symptoms will resolve, or they think it'll be for 4 or 5 years, but they're not sure?
So this is actually after that, after I gave up in Quebec to find any doctor, I started borrowing money from my dad to go and see doctors in Ontario, Ottawa City exactly. I've seen many doctors in Ottawa. So once I was going there and I was telling every doctor that I got that reaction after the COVID vaccine, the doctor here, almost most of the doctors, they were saying like, no, this is not because of the COVID vaccine. Don't say it's because of the COVID vaccine. The COVID vaccine is very safe. And I was telling them, I got it after the COVID vaccine. Said, no, just take this prescription. And every doctor was giving a different reason for my condition and give me different prescription. And I was buying all that from my pocket.
Okay.
Then one of the doctors I've been to in Ottawa, she was yelling at me once I told her I got this after the COVID vaccine, 10 days after the first shot. Her face, it's turned like aggressively, and she looked at me like this. And then she said, "Don't say that it's because of the COVID vaccine. No, it's not because of the COVID vaccine." And at that day, actually, I was crying. I got back home, I was crying. I was super frustrated. And then in 2022, actually, one of the people she's working at the government of Quebec, she arranged for me an appointment with a doctor in Quebec just to sign a paper for the compensation and for the treatment of the Debexent, to start getting that. I went to him. It was a walk-in for only one time visit. I went to him. I told him my story. And he looked at me. He told me, I'm going to say exactly what he said, and that's the truth, 1,000,000%. He told me, I'm so sorry to say that topic is very sensitive for me, and I cannot sign any paper because I might lose my license. And I told him, this is my life. Then he said, I cannot do anything, I'm so sorry. But leave the paper that you have right now, I'm going to go over it just to read what you have. Here I gave up. Then after my baby daughter, she was born, they found a family doctor for her in very far away from where we do live in Ontario. It's around 100 kilo. The doctor that we've been to for the family doctor of my daughter, the first visit, he looked at my hand. I never told him anything. He told me, this is what you have in your hand. You got it after the COVID vaccine. I told him, yes. I was crying at that moment. And then he told me, okay, I'm going to refer you to a doctor here in Ottawa. Hopefully he would help you. He referred me to a doctor here in Ottawa. And then that doctor, he checked on my body, everything. After he's seen all the medications, ointments, capsules, creams, tablets, all the prescriptions I've been taking, he told me, look, I'm going to tell you something very honest, and you have to accept it, and I'm very sorry for that. I strongly suggest that what you have of the symptoms, it's because of the COVID vaccine, Moderna. And right now, the only option that we have, you have to take a Dupixent injection twice a month until we see what could happen. And then after like many months, they send a request to the government. Nobody was responding at all. Nobody was listening. I was trying to contact with many people at the government of Canada, government of Quebec. Nobody was listening to me. I went to the media because that's my health. I was suffering. I was dying. Then after that, from nowhere, I have no idea, there is like something it's called Freedom Support. They called me and they asked me to give me the injection of Dupixent. So right now, I'm taking that injection. He said, for now, I can say you have to take it at least minimum 4 or 5 years. You could take it more for the rest of your life. We have no idea. And that's it. That's what happened with the doctor here in Ottawa. Then after that, I found a doctor in Quebec who was far away from me, 13-hour drive, to sign the paper for me of the compensation. And he told me, even this, your case, it's a permanent case. And for the Dupixent injection, it's the best option to have it right now because there is no final treatment. I gave up at that time. The only option was like, or the plan B was for me to just finish or final my disaster. My wife, she's originally from Morocco. So we made the decision to travel there to Morocco and to try to find any final treatment for my injury. I went there, I've seen 3 different doctors, and then they told me the same thing after they have gave me like different medications, medical medication and national treatments as well. Nothing worked at all. And then they told me, your condition, it's a lifetime condition. Dupixent, it's a good option for now. It gives you some relief, yes, doesn't end the problem at all. They gave me a very big example. One of them, he said, you know, the person who is addicted to drugs, and there is every day they have to take like a special quantity. So your body should be addicted to Dupixent every 2 weeks. You have to take it right now for the rest of your life. Okay. Because there's no options unless Moderna or Pfizer or those companies who made the vaccine, they made or invent a special treatments for the side effects that happened because of the vaccine.
I'm going to ask the commissioners if they have any questions for you now.
Sure.
Anyone?
Thank you for your testimony. I just wondered the reaction that you got from the doctor when she yelled at you. Do you think maybe she's been hearing a lot that it is because of the COVID vax and that was why she reacted the way she did?
She was reacting like this because I was mentioning that I got that reaction after the COVID vaccine. And once I mentioned that, she stopped me. She said, you have to listen to me. I'm not going to listen to you anymore. And she started yelling at me. She said, don't say this is because of the COVID vaccine. It's not because of the COVID vaccine. You have genetic problems. You have allergic something else. She's starting making many excuses and many reasons without giving me any test. She just wanna make just different excuses, and just the reason of the COVID vaccine, she just wanna take it away from my case. And I never had any skin problem in the whole of my life. You can check that with my medical history with ROMQ.
And then my other question is, do you think that the healthcare system is broken, given the number of doctors or the doctors that you tried to seek out, and maybe that the public health authority should have been focusing on that part of life, because you're not the only one in Canada without a doctor? They should have prioritized differently and gone after looking for doctors for people.
I would like to say something, but I hope, from everybody not being upset with me. In Canada, we have the worst healthcare system in the world. To find any doctor, if you are sick, I never expected that to happen in Canada, like one of the best countries in the world. We're going back home. Like for me, I gave up here, I went to Morocco. A lot of people, they go back to their homes to have treatments, even if they are sick from something simple as virus. Here, the healthcare system, it's super negative. It needs a lot of improvements. There is no doctors. It's impossible. Like when I told everybody about my wait at the hospital for almost 23 hours, nobody believed that. It's a disaster. I don't know how we're gonna continue our life and our future like this if there is no any kind of improvements. And I know even that's not only in Quebec, even in other provinces like Ontario or many, almost everywhere around Canada. So yes, Canada has the worst healthcare system, and actually, after what I've been through right now, I'm super disappointed. I'm super frustrated because I never expected that to have it in such a country like Canada. I never.
Thank you very much.
I'm so sorry to say that, and you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. I had a question about the symptoms that you experienced that you couldn't get serious consideration that it could actually result from the vax. And then out of the blue, you come across a doctor that seems to acknowledge that. So my question is, do you know whether this doctor had seen similar kind of symptoms before associated with the vaccine? And do you know of other people that would have a similar condition like yours?
So the doctor that he said, I strongly suggest what you have of the symptom that it's because of the COVID vaccine. He told me I've seen different people have this kind of this kind of reactions because of the vaccine, but yours is the worst so far I've seen. And after my story was posted in the media, there is thousands of people around Canada. They did contact with me via social media and by emails. They are talking about the same reactions. But unfortunately, and that's the worst part, that their doctors, some of them, they have family doctors for more than 20 years, 15, 16 years. When they went back to them to say that we got this because after the COVID vaccine, that reaction, their doctors, they canceled their files after 15, 16, 20 years of being their patients just because they said this is after we got that reaction after the COVID vaccines. And I got shocked of what's happening. It's unbelievable. It's totally unbelievable that Canada something happening like this in our country here.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions? No? Okay, on behalf of the National Citizens Inquiry, I want to thank you for coming and giving your testimony today.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
again.
Thanks. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Our next witness is attending virtually, Louise McDonald. Louise, can you hear me? So, Louise, if you can turn your camera and your mic on, that would be great. There you go. I can see you. Can you speak so I can see if I can hear you? Okay, so can you speak again?
I can hear you now.
Okay, and I can hear you. So I'd like to start by asking you to state your full name for the record, spelling your first and last name.
Louise McDonald, Louise-MacDonald.
Louise, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Now, you're here to actually share with us basically your analysis of government data, but I'm going to give a bit of your background. So just to introduce you, so you were a manager at Sobeys for 25 years.
Yes.
And you managed the deli department, which did yearly $1 million in sales.
Approximately, yeah.
Yeah, and you had to reconcile the accounts.
Yes.
So basically, you had to track all the money that, you know, going in and out to reconcile
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
And through that experience for a quarter century, you developed very strong analytical skills.
I had to.
Right, and you smile. So,
Yeah.
okay. And then also, you had the misfortune in 2015 to have acute kidney failure caused by a medication. And
Yes.
that then set you on the path to researching medications because you had to be extremely careful.
Correct.
Okay, so you became familiar with researching medications. When the
Yes.
vaccine came along, you noticed that it contained polyethylene glycol, and that's
Yes.
something you need to avoid.
Yes, it was in the medication that caused my acute kidney failure.
Yeah, and so because of your background in basically analyzing things and your interest in the medications, you started collecting and collating government data on adverse reactions.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, you've prepared a little presentation for us. I'm wondering if you can just launch into that and share your findings and your thoughts.
Okay, so basically when I was doing the research, I came across Canada's website. What better place to find out the ingredients of the vaccines and as much information as possible. So all the screenshots I'm going to share today are from the Canadian government website. They are from the case by vaccination status report, the vaccine adverse event reports, and a lot of screenshots are from NACI statements. I'm just trying to find where everything is. So I know we're short for time, so I'm going to start not where I'd originally planned. Actually, no, I will. So just bear with me.
You're just looking for the screen share, I presume. And while you do that, I'll just indicate that Louise had shared with me that basically she took an entire year documenting what she's kind of synthesized for us as a presentation today.
Sorry, I'm not very good with Zoom and technical stuff.
Now, there you go. We've got screen sharing.
Yeah.
And we've got a slide that says since December 14th, 2020.
Now what this is the case by vaccination status report. And It's the report for December 25th, 2021 at the top. Now, this is how the government reports the case by vaccination status, and they use data collected since December 14th, 2020. Now, that immediately raised a bell because in December 14th, 2020, next to no Canadians were fully vaccinated. And down at the bottom, where's the yellow number 2, just want to make a point that there's only one fully vaccinated category. And then when I saw number 3, the gray columns, those are the number of unvaccinated cases, hospitalizations, and deaths compared to the fully vaccinated, not yet protected, and partially vaccinated. That almost had me second guessing whether I should get the vaccine. So I did a little bit more research, and up until May 27th, 95 to 100% of Canadians weren't vaccinated, so it overinflated the unvaccinated numbers. And then, so this is how the Government of Canada reports it. So the top one is 12 months of data. And if you look at the graph down below, the unvaccinated cases were counted for the full 12 months, and fully vaccinated was only counted for about 5.5 months. So it made me think, well, it's not really the same playing field that you're comparing 12 months to 6 months. So this screenshot is the same report, so the week of December 18th to December 25th, 2021. Now this chart shows only 1 week of data, which is highlighted in the red line below. Now, when you look at the charts together and compare them together, it's totally different. So the top graphs here show the unvaccinated cases to appear to be so much higher than the fully vaccinated. But when you just show 1 week of data, where 75% of Canadians were fully vaccinated and 25% weren't, that week, 97% of cases were in fully vaccinated Canadians. So because the fully vaccinated were getting really high, they divided the fully vaccinated into 2 categories. On January 30th, and then they started comparing unvaccinated to fully vaccinated and boosted. So again, they're comparing 17 months of unvaccinated cases to only 5 months worth of data for fully vaccinated and boosted, because they were only just fully vaccinated and boosted for 5 months. And then again on June 5th, 2022, they split the fully vaccinated categories into 3 again. This also divides the numbers, divides the percentages, and grossly overinflates the unvaccinated numbers.
And just so we're clear, the unvaccinated would include people that are not fully vaccinated. So they could have 1 shot, or they could have had 2 shots, but not cleared the 14 or 21 days or whatever after the second shot.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm just going back. So in January, they reported cases not yet protected and partially. If you look down in the bottom left corner.
Okay, so it is broken up at that point.
It is broken up at that point, but when they split it into 3, they stopped reporting the cases not yet protected and the partially vaccinated, but they still counted the numbers. So from here on in, any of my numbers are excluding the partially vaccinated and the not yet protected. So when they did this, they started comparing the unvaccinated, which is 21 months worth of data, to people that had their primary series completed and 1 booster, in the red, was only 6 months worth of data. And when they were compared against people that had the primary series completed plus 2 additional doses, that's only 4 months worth of data. So this is the last updated case by vaccination status report on the government website. So the top one shows how the government reports it since December 14th, 2020. So they're using 20 months worth of data, and it makes the unvaccinated look like a big problem. Now, in the middle graphs, this is just 4 weeks of data. So from August 28th to September 25th, this is how it looks. And this is with the 3 primary series completed categories separate. Now, when you go down to the bottom graphs, this is the same 4 weeks, August 28, 2022 to September 25th, 22. And this is the unvaccinated compared to the 3 primary series completed altogether. So quite a different picture from the top one.
Yeah, now can I ask you a question? I appreciate that the government was reporting absolute case numbers, but did they ever break it down to, you know, cases per 100,000 or anything like that, so that we could kind of compare between the categories, you know, for specific population size?
No, not on any of the reports that I've seen.
Okay.
So when they did divide it into the primary series completed categories, and they stopped reporting the part vaxxed and the not yet protected, they still counted those numbers. So just to give you an idea that of the cases, 6.2% of the cases were not yet protected or partially vaccinated. 7.7% of the hospitalizations were not yet protected or partially vaccinated. And in the death, 8.1%. Just to give you an idea of the amount of cases that are missing. And I could only do percentages because they didn't give the numbers. Okay. So I'm just going to go back to the next presentations. It's going to be on the safe and effective vaccines. So I've got to go back. Sorry about this. I'm really not good with.
Actually, we understand and appreciate that. Did they have, when you were showing us the, you know, COVID cases, did they change how they were classifying COVID cases? Because some witnesses have told us that early on, basically, if you had a list of symptoms, you would be classed as a COVID case, where then later, when PCR tests became available, you would be a case. And some have suggested that they would run more cycles on an unvaccinated person than a vaccinated person, so which would change the numbers again. I'm just wondering if you ran across any information there, or did they not clarify things like that?
Yeah, over the 2.5 years that I dabbled in this, I heard a lot of other people saying that, you know, the cycles are that and all these other things, but I only ever concentrated on case by vaccination status and the serious adverse events. And any of the data that I'm going to show you and the numbers are regarding serious adverse events only. So this is the little presentation on safe and effective. So AstraZeneca Vaxzevria COVID vaccine was, I believe, approved around September 2021. And they say all COVID-19 vaccines are proven safe, effective, and of high quality. And again, on March 24th, 2021, Health Canada issued a label change and guidance on the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine. And they state Health Canada reassures the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine continues to be safe and effective. Now, this is the vaccine safety report from March 3rd, 2023. It's the last one they updated. And on the bottom, on the bottom, for all AstraZeneca vaccines, the serious adverse event reporting rate was 34.20 per 100,000 doses administered. And that equals one serious adverse event in on average, every 2,923 doses administered. Now, I don't know what's classed safe and effective, but I don't think I would be wanting to put that into my body. Now, in the middle there, where it says 841 and 1,782, the original report has not applicable. Now, they did have those numbers, and where I got the 1,782 is on this report, just on a different page on the Canadian government website. And this is where I got the number of doses administered. So I calculated it, and on dose 3, there was one serious adverse event in every 118 doses administered. Now, there were only 1,782 third doses administered. I still think that's 1,782 too many. And thank God there was only 28 fourth and fifth doses, because they were one serious adverse event in 14. So for the 28 doses administered, there was 2 serious adverse events. So this is the Moderna Spikevax COVID vaccine. And again, approved by Health Canada, all COVID-19 vaccines are proven safe, effective, and of high quality. Now, this includes, on the right-hand side, the Spikevax bivalent, original and Omicron BA.1, and the original Omicron BA.4/5. So these are proven safe and effective and of high quality. And this is the NACI statement. NACI's the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, and they advise the Public Health Agency of Canada on everything to do with COVID. And this was released at the same time, and it states there are currently no data on the efficacy, immunogenicity, or safety of the Moderna Spikevax bivalent COVID vaccine. Now, and then they go on to say that the benefit may outweigh any potential risks that are unknown. If you don't know the efficacy or immunogenicity, then how do you know the benefit? And how can you determine that the benefit outweighs the risk if the risk is unknown? This is the vaccine safety report, and this one gives the serious reporting rates for vaccine dose numbers. And for the Moderna bivalent, the serious reporting rate is 32.96 serious adverse events for every 100,000 doses administered. That equals one serious adverse event for every 3,033 doses administered. The Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. Now this one, all COVID-19 vaccines are proven safe, effective, and of high quality. Approved for Health Canada. Now this one, again, is at the top, March 3rd, 2023. All this data is still on the internet. For all Johnson & Johnson's Janssen COVID vaccine, the serious reporting rate was 148 0.05 per 100,000 doses administered. That equals one serious adverse event in every 675 doses administered. I don't see how that could be proven safe. And again, so this is on the Health Canada authorizes the first bivalent COVID-19 booster dose, September 1st, safe and effective. Again, October 7th, COVID vaccine booster with the bivalent vaccine, Omicron vaccine, safe and effective. That's on October 7th. And on November 3rd, 2022, the update says vaccine effectiveness has not yet been established for the bivalent booster products. Now, the next few screenshots are all on the NACI statements. So this one is the risk of myocarditis and pericarditis associated with additional doses is currently unknown. Currently, there are no estimates of vaccine efficacy available for the Pfizer-BioNTech Comirnaty bivalent vaccine. There is currently no clinical evidence on the safety, immunogenicity, or efficacy of the Pfizer-BioNTech Comirnaty bivalent vaccine in children 5 to 11 years. And these kids were recommended to get the dose. Now, this one is on the Vaxzevria, which is AstraZeneca's. And it states it is unknown whether Vaxzevria may impact fertility in humans. No data are available in humans. And below that, the safety and efficacy of Vaxzevria in pregnant women have not yet been established. They were advised to get vaccinated. There are currently no data available on the efficacy, immunogenicity, or safety of the bivalent Omicron-containing mRNA vaccines in adolescents 12 to 17 years of age. I have thousands of screenshots like this. There's currently insufficient evidence on the duration of protection and on the efficacy of the vaccine in preventing death, hospitalization, infection, and reducing transmission, although studies are ongoing. Summary of evidence of an additional dose of COVID-19 vaccine following a 2-dose primary series. There's currently no data on the efficacy or effectiveness. Currently, the risk of myocarditis, pericarditis in children following immunization with the Pfizer vaccine is unknown. These vaccines are still approved for use in Canada, and these vaccines are still being mandated to government workers. And the last little presentation I have, I will cut some of them out because I know that you are getting, or that we are very behind. Now,
before you jump to the next presentation,
yeah.
So you're giving us the numbers that are reported as serious adverse reactions.
Yes.
Do you know how robust that data is? So, for example, in the United States, there have been estimates done of how many, basically how inadequate the VAERS system is, in that hardly any get reported out of the total number of deaths and serious adverse reactions. Do you have any idea in Canada how many adverse reactions, or what percentage of adverse reactions actually make it into that database?
Well, I'm not an expert. I don't know that answer. I've heard lots of stories. I've heard doctors say less than 2%, but I'm not an expert. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
These numbers that I'm giving you are the numbers that have been reported. So they're at least this high. So, and again, I said all the numbers that I'm giving are for only the serious adverse events. Now, on the Canada Health Infobase website, an event is considered serious if it results in death, is life-threatening, an event or reaction in which the patient was at real rather than hypothetical risk of death at the time of the event or reaction, or it requires inpatient hospitalization or prolongation of an existing hospitalization. It could result in a persistent or significant disability, incapacity, or result in a congenital anomaly or a birth defect. So all these numbers that I'm giving today are only on serious adverse events. So this is the report that I stumbled on when I was researching what were in the vaccines. And this is the beginning of the web page. And when you go down further, you get a summary of the data for that report. And I just want to make a little note. There's a signal. It says there was a signal of ischemic stroke in people 65 years of age and over. And it says, and I make a note of this, the signal has not been found in other vaccine safety monitoring systems in the US, nor in other countries, including Canada. That'll come in handy later. So down further is, this shows all the historical reports. So for each column, that represents a report. And then down below that, it says Figure 1 text description. So when you click on that, it takes you to this report. And this is basically all the historical reports. So each line here represents a column in this chart here. Now, I went over this data every day for 2 years. And every time they update the new report, they say that these numbers can change to reflect any delays in reporting serious adverse events. This might be a little bit hard to explain. Yeah, the next one. So the middle column that's highlighted in red is for serious, cumulative serious adverse events only. So every week or every month that this report comes out, I noticed that these changed. And I started having a really hard time tracking because I could say, well, if I remember correctly, it wasn't that the week before, and I would go back the week before, and sure enough, I was correct. It wasn't that. So this was updated every report. So the column in the middle here, highlighted in red, is basically, I put it in a spreadsheet. So March 3rd, 2023, in the black highlighted one. So those are all the numbers. So here in this one is January, February, March, April, May down, and the numbers. The box in red is this box in black. So every column in this spreadsheet represents an updated report. From January 2021 to April 8th, 2022, these reports were weekly. Now, each column represents the updated numbers, and the colored columns represent the number that changed from the week before. So it was pretty consistent from January 1st, 2021 to April 8th, all except for those three red columns. Serious adverse events were updated to include these numbers. And I mean, some of them were quite high, 200 added in one report. So then they went to monthly reports, and this is a breakdown of the monthly reports. Now, on the left-hand side is April 1st, 2020, and these are the first monthly reports. Again, each column represents 1 month's updated data, the historical data. Now, from April 1st, May, June, July, and August 19th, those numbers continued. Those are serious adverse events that were added or updated in the historical reports. And on August 19th, something really strange happened. From August 19th to March 3rd, most recently, these numbers started to be updated, and these are the numbers of serious adverse events that were removed from these historical reports. This one here is a little bit further down on the same report, and what this is a breakdown of the vaccine doses, the serious adverse events, by vaccine and dose number. This is the last vaccine adverse event report that was updated March 3rd, 2023. Now, for all doses administered that month, the serious adverse event reporting rate was 36.83 per 100,000 doses administered. That equals one serious adverse event for every 2,715 doses administered. And that was for the most recent month. I'm not an expert, I'm not a vaccinologist or a doctor. I don't know what safe is, but one serious adverse event in 2,715 doses administered, I'm not getting that. That wasn't a one-time event either. So this is the report for November 11th, and these are the updated historical numbers for January 8th. And that's even more. So the reporting rate of 37.57 per 100,000 doses administered, that equates to one serious adverse event for every 2,661 doses administered. So the last month of the reports, March 3rd, was 1 in 2,715. And the first month of the report of the vaccine rollout was 1 in 2,661. Now these aren't the original numbers reported. So for January 8, 2021, these are the original numbers that were reported. So 10 serious adverse events in the middle in the top chart, and 338,423 doses administered. This equates to one serious adverse event for every 33,842 doses administered. That could be safe, I'm not sure. But 1 year, and 44 weeks later, those numbers, the number of serious adverse events, the first arrow tripled to 31, and the cumulative number of doses administered dropped by, I believe it was around 255,000 doses. So we went from one serious adverse event every 33,842 doses administered to one serious adverse event for every 2,661 doses administered.
For the
Now,
same
the
reporting period.
Yeah. So this goes back to how many, I'm just going to go, how many were added since the original report. And like I said, the numbers, so it basically took 1 year and 44 weeks to have the last serious adverse event that happened on the first month of the vaccine rollout to be documented. This again is not a one-time event. This is the report, sorry?
I just, you had spoken earlier and shown us some charts, and and you've told us how numbers get added. So let's say for January 2021, you know, if they're reporting in February of 2021, let's say they have I'm just making figures up, they have 100 cases, and I can understand that as the year goes by, that, you know, cases that haven't been processed or, you know, were held up in the provincial side or whatever trickle in, and so that the number goes up. But what I don't understand is you've been talking about some numbers going down, and that doesn't make sense. How do reports get pulled out that had been accepted before? Because you were showing some pretty significant numbers.
Yeah, these here. Well, I don't know where they come from or where they're subtracted. All I know that this is the data. And up until August 19th, they were added. And then after August 19th, the cumulative number of serious adverse events started to decline right up until the last report.
Right. So the total number was higher in August of 2022 than it is in March of 2023.
Yeah. So,
and no explanation by Health Canada as to why they removed reports.
No. Why they were added? Well, obviously they said that the numbers in the historic reports will change to reflect any delays in reporting in the previous weeks. But there's been delays.
Well, like I say, I can understand the numbers going up because of delay, but I can't see the numbers going down because of delay. That's what's confusing me. So, but
well, it confuses me too. I don't know why. I don't know why it is, but these are just the numbers. I'm just reporting what the Canadian government is releasing. So how they're subtracting them, I don't know. But, and again, like I said, it's not a one-time event. These are the original numbers reported for February, which is the second month of the vaccine rollout. And the serious adverse event reporting rate was 22.86. Now, that still to me seems a little bit high. It equals one serious adverse event for every, on average, for every 4,374 doses administered. Now, 1 year later, the serious adverse event reporting rate more than doubled. It's now 50.83. So these were added on to the original reports. A reporting rate of 50.83 is the equivalent of on average, one serious adverse event in every 1,967 doses administered. That's all vaccines. And this will be the last one for the change. So July 23rd, 2021, the original cumulative total of serious adverse events was 2,672. And 1 year, 4 weeks later, on August 19th, 2022, that number is now 4,283. That's an additional 1,600.
And Luis, you just froze. So we'll just give a sec to see if Zoom catches up with us. So we've actually had our technical difficulties today, and usually they begin in the morning. So today at the end of the day. I'll just ask David, do we still have internet? So just for those watching, we're just doing a reconnect. We're almost done with this witness, but we'll see if we can log her back in and finish her evidence. And it looks like she's connecting. Okay. So are we still online? Okay, so we've lost the ability to have Wi-Fi, so we've lost this witness. I think fortunately we were close to the end, but we'll just wait another moment and just see if we can get her back, as the commissioners might have had some questions. And there we go. So Louise,
Yeah.
we had some internet problems at our end, and you had just frozen. So we lost you for a little bit. Now we've kind of run out of time. So I'm wondering if, there's something important for you to sum up, and then I'll see if the commissioners have some questions for you.
Yeah, I'm almost done. So
Okay.
So what this shows how long it took to document serious adverse events. So from January to August, it was over a year, up to 1 year and 44 weeks to document a serious adverse event. If it's taken that long to document them, how can any safety issue be triggered that they're unsafe? So in May 11th, 2022, the Johnson & Johnson's vaccine was authorized for a first booster dose. Now, 2 weeks before it was authorized, on April 29th, 2020, the serious adverse event reporting rate was 112.6 per 100,000 doses administered. That equates to one serious adverse event for every 888 doses administered. And 2 weeks later, that vaccine's authorized as a booster dose. And like I said, if it's taking a year to document serious adverse events, then it's just mind-blowing. I'll pass that one. We don't need that. So this is the last screenshot. This is from January 2021 up until March 3rd, 2023, and it shows the updated numbers that were updated that are yellow to August 19th, and then after that, and these are still on the website if you want to go and you can check all this stuff. And the last thing, November 11th and December 9th was the only report where there was no serious adverse events added or removed.
Okay, so thank you for that presentation. I'll ask the
You're
commissioners
welcome.
if they have any questions.
Yeah.
And there are questions.
I would imagine.
Well, where to start? Thank you very much for your presentation. I will have to probably go back to it in order to get a better picture. But one of the things that I notice in your analysis is, first there's a lag in reporting. Sometimes it goes up and down. We don't know why.
Yeah.
Do you expect to get a final picture of on what the number will be, or do you see lately that it's still fluctuating?
Oh, I could give you my opinion, but this is 2.5 years of 8 hours to 12 hours a day of studying these. I have tens of thousands of screenshots of this data. And to me, I mean, like I said, I'm not an expert, but to me it shows that they underreported the serious adverse events and delayed up to 1 year, like it took 1 year and 44 weeks to document a serious adverse event. How can any serious adverse event be triggered if it's taking a year to document them? And obviously with these numbers, I mean, approving a vaccine for a booster dose when you get one serious adverse event for every 888 doses administered, it's just, I don't know what to say. Like, how can they be approving them with that safety record? And if they're taking 1 year and 44 weeks to document, like I said, how is that going to how can a safety issue be triggered?
My other question has to do with the AstraZeneca vaccine that has been removed in many places because the serious adverse event was deemed to be too high. It's very difficult to pinpoint the exact number, but I thought the number that I've seen, at least from Europe, was like much, much higher than this 1 in 888 that you're mentioning for G&J. So,
No, that was Janssen's, the 188.
yeah, but I'm talking about if that's the number that they are using to recommend a booster for J&J, and the number for AstraZeneca was way lower than that when they removed it, I fail to see the rationale or the scientific basis to make that kind of recommendation.
Well, if they're making the recommendation and the serious adverse events haven't been reported yet because it's taking a year to report them, then I seriously, I don't know what to say. It shouldn't be taking over a year to document serious adverse events. So the Janssen, I mean, AstraZeneca was still giving 5th doses. They knew it was dangerous. If you look here, like I said, thank God there was only 28 4th and 5th doses administered, but the Janssen's vaccine, which is 1 serious adverse event and 888 doses administered, there never should have been a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th dose administered. But because the delay in documenting these serious adverse events is up to a year and 44 weeks, I mean, that's why it's being allowed or being approved. They're not documenting the serious adverse events when they happen.
We've seen from another presentation that there's been, I would say, measure put in place to increase the rate of vaccination by partnering with pharmacy and giving bonuses to doctor in order to accelerate that. And if we measure the rate of vaccination we accomplish in Canada, we can say it's a success. I mean, we get a fairly high rate of vaccination in Canada, probably due to the, I would say, efficient deployment of all of these measures that have been put in place to accelerate that. In order to get the number that you spend thousands of hours to compute and maybe get a more on-time, I would say, assessment of the safety of the vaccine, could you recommend something that could have been done in order to get to these numbers on a more regular basis?
Well, yeah, don't threaten doctors with their jobs for speaking out about vaccine injuries. You know, if a vaccine injury comes through, put it through. They should all go through. 100% of vaccine injuries should be recorded. And apparently, if I'm not mistaken, do they not have to be, a serious adverse event has to be reported within 14 days? And if that's the case, why is it taking a year and 44 weeks to document these? Doctors are afraid to lose their jobs. We've heard story after story of doctors being fired for reporting adverse events. And if these are the numbers that they are reporting, I would hate to see if 100% of the vaccine injuries were documented.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Louise, I'll just indicate before any other questions that you live, for the commissioners and people watching, that you live in the Maritimes. So when you're talking about hearing reports of doctors being fired for submitting adverse reports, that's in the Maritimes area.
Yeah, well, I know Chris Milburn lost his job. I think his is the only name that I know, but I have watched a few of the NCI hearings, and it's apparent, you know, they're not. Sorry.
It's quite something, isn't it? And we had Dr. Milburn as a witness. So, and I'm sorry, I'll ask if the commissioners have any other questions.
Thank you.
You know, Louise, you have, they don't have any further questions, but you've spent a lot of time and you've, you know, screen captured a lot of information. And I'm going to suggest that you maybe get, you and somebody else figure out some way of collating and making that available for other researchers.
Oh, I will. I've actually have every vaccine safety report, every number, every vaccine by dose number, every case by vaccination status report, all in Excel spreadsheets.
No, and that's quite incredible, and I'm just suggesting that you could be of great service to making a point of making that public and available.
I will. I've been trying to make it public and available, but I keep getting my social media accounts shut down for misinformation for reporting the Canadian government reports on vaccine injuries.
Well, now we know what to think of government reports. So, Louise, there be no further questions. On behalf of the National Citizens Inquiry, I want to thank you dearly for attending. And
thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for all the research you've done. One of the things that we've been trying to do is to encourage people to take action. And you, for the last 2 years, just have wanted to dig down and discover some truth, and you've been of great service. Yeah. So I just want to thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. And I will, as soon as I can get all, it's literally tens of thousands of data that I will have to find a way to have, I will send them to you, and somehow I'll get them documented on the NCI website.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share this.
Thank you, Louise.
Okay.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Commissioners. Sean has asked me to close off today, and those who've watched my closings on prior days would know that I don't take long, and I also like cartoons and memes. So, David, if you would put up the meme of the day. So, through the course of these hearings, we've been turning up the heat on those who would like to keep their activities shrouded in darkness. Government figures of authority, pharma, you can go on down the list of suspects. If you know anything about the Lord of the Rings trilogy and Tolkien, the Ring of Power, you can only see the coded script on it. You can only see it when you heat the ring. You can only see it when you heat the ring, and then you can decode what's there. The script, according to this translation, is one lie to rule them all. Fear, possibly. Be afraid. One lie to find them. The vaccine passport. One lie to scare them all, and in their terror, bind them. Mass psychosis. This is not finished. This is not finished. And I think what I sensed, and perhaps all of us sensed, who paid attention to the testimony in particular of Denis Rancourt and Catherine Austin Fitz earlier today, we could sense that there was more script, not yet visible, yet to be decoded on that ring, that has to do with vast underlying geopolitical forces and vast movement of tectonic plates in the world of finance, where we were told by Catherine Austin Fitz they are busy denuding the real economy, the visible economy, and transferring assets leaving us with debts and transferring assets into the criminal economy. Somewhere the truth lies when we stitch together that kind of analysis of what we're seeing in the financial system that she's been documenting for 25 years now, and what Denis Rancourt, a brilliant scientist, is able to detect applying his techniques to the world scene. I won't try and stitch it together any further right now. But what we've achieved in these hearings is we've been turning up the heat, and turning up the heat on those who want to keep the truth hidden from us. Eventually, we will fully decode the evil behind the script by turning up the heat. But in order to keep turning up that heat, we need the help of all the volunteers out there and all of those brave citizens who've helped us by funding the efforts of the National Citizens Inquiry. We exist only because of your generosity. Please continue with that generosity. Thank you.
Before we adjourn for the day, I'll just indicate for those present and those watching online, we are starting early tomorrow. So we're going to start at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time instead of our usual start time of 9 o'clock. So we'll see everyone at 8:30 Eastern Time.